Okay. Any questions about what's coming up or what's due? Anything at all as we get started in class? Look at your notes, and we're finishing up the chapter on learning, which we will do, finish up today on operant conditioning. Then we'll talk about memory and emotions. So, did you have a question? No? All right. Any questions about what we were covering? And yeah, you can still, the clicker thing in, you can do that. It's still going. Questions about where we ended? I ended here with this notion of applications, and I added one more to it. Now, the way we apply this. Ready in your notes? I want to have one more time for you to understand the unconditioned stimulus, the unconditioned response, the conditioned stimulus, and the conditioned response. And I'll tell you real quickly how this has come about in one of last application, and that is with ranchers. And so I'd like you to be thinking in this category. Ready? In this case, what is the unconditioned stimulus? What's the unconditioned response? The conditioned stimulus and the conditioned response. Well, here's how it works. We talked in here about having, for some of us, when we had the flu bug and then we ate a particular food that made us, the flu bug made us sick, but we associated it with nausea, and so we avoid that food. By the way, this is very difficult to break. Anybody had one of these kind of connections that's been going on 10 years since you were little? Some last a long time. Some in the animal world can even last a couple of generations. And it's how ranchers in some parts of the country have learned to handle, for example, wild animals coming in and eating their, like for example, sheep that they have. So a sheep herder or rancher has used classical conditioning in a cool way. What is the UCS, the UCR, the CS, and the CR in this story? Ready? The sheep were getting attacked by coyotes. And so ranchers utilizing, the researcher who studied all this was John Garcia. John Garcia studied how food preferences and food aversions can get conditioned into us so we avoid certain things. So ranchers heard about this, and what would happen is these coyotes would come, eat their sheep, and then the ranchers would go out and shoot them, right? They'd want to kill the wolves or sheep that came by, and they found a much more humane way to do this. What they did was they took sheep carcasses, dead sheep, and they sprinkled on the sheep carcass a little bit of poison that would make any animal that ate it, whether it was a dog or a coyote, any animal that ate this would get nauseated. And so they sprinkled this poison, put it on the sheep carcass, set it not far outside of the sheep pens. Coyotes would come that night, eat the sheep carcass, and almost within a few minutes were throwing up all over the place. Much like we would if we're throwing up from something with the flu virus. And guess what happened? These coyotes associated getting ill with sheep. And they did not like, at that point, to eat any sheep because they thought that's what made them sick. And so what was very visual and telling in all of this was what they did next is that they went and actually captured some of these coyotes and put them in the sheep pen, and then they let the sheep come in. You know what those coyotes did? Ran from the sheep. Instead of going out and eat them, the other coyotes were like, "You sissy, what are you doing? You're running from a sheep." And they're like, "I don't want anything to do with that animal." And they would run from them. The sheep would kind of go like that, and the coyotes would just take off. So that's and they would pass this on, this aversion. Now about the third generation, the other ones would go, "I don't know why you run from sheep, they taste good." And so you'd have to keep doing this. That's an application of a classical conditioning process that's, in a sense, saved a lot of ranchers from having to kill things like coyotes that would come in and eat, okay? Questions from your notes as we move forward into operant conditioning? Yeah, go ahead.
So you're talking about hypnosis and classical conditioning. How does it fit?
different ways that there's not as much study. It has a place. There's ways in which it can be done and influence. I'm assuming it's done by people who want to, let's say, like in the area of magic, right, or an area of influencing people, but it's probably not as commonly studied, but it would fall into something similar to this. We'll talk a little, probably in psychology it might fall into this area of priming or having people think about things, which helps them recall other things. So it is related to associations. Have you seen that connection there with how people might think about something? And I'll tell you what, we'll share a little bit about this when it comes to deja vu. Okay, and which is coming up. All right, operant conditioning. This animal is now doing something that it probably wouldn't normally do in the wild or even in captivity until a human has taught it to do things. And when we start getting into more complex behaviors, you start to see that we need to use something called operant conditioning, which is a type of learning in which behavior is strengthened if it's followed by a reinforcement. We call that operant conditioning. To get a coyote to stop eating sheep by making it sick is classical conditioning. It's a very somewhat simplistic or reflexive behavior, but if you want a dolphin to jump up in the sky as high as it can and touch something, or you want to teach a bird to fly over to eat something, or anything else that we were talking about, more complex behaviors usually involve operant conditioning, all right? Or sometimes a combination. How many have been to SeaWorld and seen these animals perform in I'll tell you this, I don't know if any of you all were as surprised as I was when I saw, by the way, I'll teach you today, by the end, how to train a dolphin to jump into the sky at higher than this ceiling and to touch, well, they wouldn't do it in here, but if you ever were able to get a job at SeaWorld, it's really easy to train a dolphin to do something on command. And all it takes is for you to know two specific things related to operant conditioning. And it's called, and you don't have to write these down now, but you find a target and you find a bridge signal. You do those two things and you can train or know how they're training. And you can look for them if you ever go to SeaWorld or see animals that have been trained. You can watch and listen for either the bridge signal or find the target. You do those two things. By the way, you can train dogs, cats, and more household pets using the same technique. So we'll do that today. So what she's done is train this animal. How did she get this animal to jump up here? What would you think is the first thing she did? What's the first thing she did? Somehow, yeah. Okay, let's start with this question. What does this animal right here find reinforcing? Somebody who said food, right? You get this animal to where it is interested. By the way, these animals are hungry. They can eat 50 pounds of fish every day. It's a lot of fish, and so you use this. We could give me a rat, which I ran a rat lab, which is a learning lab, and you give students in this class a rat, and they train this rat. I know it sounds gross, but these rats are really cool. They're really fun, actually, and friendly. But you can teach this rat or pigeon, whatever it is, to do certain things. And within 30 minutes, if we brought in a rat and we put up the right kinds of equipment, we could teach it by reinforcing it to do something much like this animal is doing. Like I can have it push a bar or reach up and push a lever just to get food or to turn a circle, whatever it is, and it's simply by what we call process of this, reinforcing a behavior. And the way it works is you find a behavior that the animal is performing or doing, and if you want it to continue, you reinforce it. And so in that regard, it's much more voluntary than classical conditioning in that an animal or a human's behavior is influenced by the consequences. And you know this in your own life, right? If you do something and you get reinforced for it, you're liable to do it again. Anybody have any example in which you now do something more frequently Because you've been reinforced by it. Somebody laughed at a joke, and so you tell it again. Or somebody said, how that hairstyle looks good on you, or something. Has that ever happened to you? Where that kind of like, oh, okay, I'll wear this again. I remember when I was an undergraduate, a student, my roommate, his name was Fat Ed, and I don't know why we called him Fat Ed, but that was just his name. And so here he comes, and I say, hey, Fat Ed, what are you doing? And he comes in, and he's with somebody, and this student that he's with, this girl was really, really cute. And so he introduces me to her, and we start visiting. And as I walked away, she said, oh, I really like that shirt on you, or something like that. And I remember thinking, oh, thanks. I wore that shirt like every day for like 10 days waiting to see her again. Well, that's reinforcement, right? This behavior now that I did of wearing a shirt, as simplistic as that sounds, was reinforced. And this now is a process that we're going to explore that is related to some very fundamental things in the field of learning. And it started with a researcher named E.L. Thorndike, who began to study how do people learn, or animals for that matter, learn new skills. New skills called the law of effect. Anybody know the researcher who began to explore this, and what animals? E.L. Thorndike, and he studied, anybody know what animals he studied? Early on, wrote a dissertation on them. He's a researcher, and yeah, he studied cats, and he threw pillows at them going chick like that. No, he didn't. E.L. Thorndike didn't do that, but he did study cats. And he studied them by putting them in puzzle boxes. And what he wanted to find out was, how do cats get out of places that have latches and levers in order to get something like food? And here's the way, this is a reenactment, of course, this isn't E.L. Thorndike, but I'll show you a quick video of what he did and how he explored this by looking at, gosh, I hope this works now. Yes. Okay. Here's E.L. Thorndike.
How is a new skill learned? That was a question which began to fascinate Thorndike. To answer it, he built some ingenious puzzle boxes from which cats could only escape by operating latches. And then you go. The cat appears to be very clever in engineering its escape, solving a problem with a deftly placed paw and a push of its nose. But Thorndike didn't believe that an animal, even a clever cat, understands the consequences of its behavior. When he placed a cat in the puzzle box for the first time, Thorndike was unable to see any evidence of flashes of insight. The successful actions appeared first by chance. He proved that the apparent cleverness arose by trial and error, and used graphs to measure the rate of learning. A well-practiced cat quickly recalls the actions that help it escape to its reward of food. If an action brings a reward, Thorndike believed that that action becomes stamped into the mind. In his thesis, he explained further his ideas about learning, that behavior changes because of its consequences. He called this his law of effect, which explained how even wild creatures develop new habits. Grizzly bears, for instance, are great opportunists. They're not born fishermen. Each one has to learn its own method of catching younger ones are excited and try anything. They waste a lot of energy and are sometimes spectacularly unsuccessful. A few bears seem at a loss to know what to do. But some techniques pay off better than others. By trial and error, the old bears have dropped their inhibition habits and learned to keep still and lunge at passing sound. This massive male simply braves the surge of water and waits for fish to swim into his jaws. It's difficult to measure a bear's performance. Psychologists found rats easier to work with. Thorndike's contribution to the study of behavior was his emphasis on measuring performance. And the maze was a useful device for that.
All right. What happened was, as Thorndike began looking at this law of effect to see what was stamped in, and finding that as he studied certain animals, they began by this trial and error process, what he called law of effect, to learn new skills. While Skinner, the one probably more of us are familiar with, B.F. Skinner expanded this law and is now the one we associate with really moving this area of operant conditioning forward. B.F. Skinner, as you know, studied lots of different animals and put together, like for example, this is even called a Skinner box. Partially because he designed this, and this is a very typical, you can still find these in a lot of universities. We used to have a pigeon lab. Where I'm from at Colorado State, we had a rat lab. As I told you, we would give students this particular kind of animal. It's always a female albino rat that is a lab rat trained this way, friendly, you can handle them. And this rat can be taught to do certain things. And so, for example, it is pushing a bar right here, and this bar that it's pushing right there is hooked up to this contraption up here, which is in the middle, and it's full of food. Well, it starts this way. You get this rat, you put it into a cage, and you give it all of the food that it wants. Rats, when they're developing and growing, don't overeat. They eat just as much as they want, and then they stop eating, and they get to this weight, and you weigh them, and you find out how much they weigh, and then you put them on a diet. And they have to lose, let's say, 15% of their weight. And so you restrict their food, and now they're weighing 85% of what their free feeding weight was. So now they're hungry. And you put them in this cage, and they walk around, and they're looking for food, and now they're ready to be trained. And it's looking for food, and you give students a little clicker. And every time this rat, how would you train this rat to push this right here to get food? That a food pellet will roll down here. That rat doesn't know that that bar creates food. So how do you train that rat to push that bar? What would you do? How would you train the rat if it never touched a bar before, never saw it, never was in this box before, but he has to come over there, and the only way he can get food is by pushing this bar? How would you do it? Yeah, how many have ever played the game hot or cold? I don't know, those kids, are you getting warmer, that kind of thing? It's exactly what you do with this rat. You get a little clicker, and you give it to the person standing here, and as soon as this rat gets anywhere, now let's say this was the bar, if this rat was walking around hungry, looking for food, exploring, and as soon as it got near the bar, you would click it, and food would come down, and the animal would eat. And then you would wait the next time until the rat got a little bit closer, and then when it gets closer, you click it, and then eventually you don't click it until the rat gets right next to it, and then you click it, and then you wait, and probably within 30 minutes, you can train a rat that's never been in a box like this to walk up and just push a bar to get food. Okay? This is called shaping. Shaping simply takes a number of what we call successive approximations, behaviors that are close to what you want, and you give this animal something that it needs, like food or is looking for, and you use that to motivate the animal and reinforce the animal. And we call this shaping. It's a fairly straightforward concept. It's familiar to most of you all. And it's by using successive approximations. It gets closer and closer to approximating the behavior that you want. And so we do this with children all of the time, just naturally, where they start to say certain things, like you'll hear a baby when they first talk, and they'll go, mama, mama, mama. Yeah, good, mama, say mama. And then the baby will be, mama, good, yeah. You're smiling, and the kid's going, oh, it's getting closer. Yeah, come on, say mama. And then that's kind of an easy example of the way in which we kind of naturally just shape behaviors that we want. So what Skinner did was kind of, in a sense, began to identify what was going on in this process, what allowed these different animals to be trained, and he developed these principles that have been since expanded on, principles of reinforcement. Well, principles of reinforcement starts with anything. Reinforcement, basically, remember, means anything, any event that increases the likelihood of a response that it follows, that's a reinforcer. Give me some things that in a person's life they would call a reinforcer. What's an example of a reinforcer in our lives? Maybe a good grade. You get a good grade, you're like, oh, that was cool. I'm going to study and put time in so I can get another good grade. So a good grade could be a reinforcement for us. Allowance, getting money by completing chores or doing whatever we're asked to do could be a reinforcement. Go ahead, way back there, yeah. Great. Negative reinforcement is the same kind of thing. It increases the likelihood of a response, but I'll give you the distinction between what I'm going to call a positive reinforcement and then a negative. So they function very similarly. But let's stay first with positive reinforcement. So I heard good grades. For that animal that was up there, it was fish, right? Killer whales, dolphins, whatever, they find fish. Other things they might find reinforcing, but we could say for humans, maybe it's good grades or paychecks or nice clothes or attention. Any of you all ever work in a home with children, maybe that live there? I used to run and operate a number of, or at least work in places that had kids living there. I ran a home with 50 behaviorally disturbed boys. Lived in a home for a while as a counselor with 10 emotionally disturbed children, boys and girls, and we almost always used positive reinforcement to help us shape behavior of these children by finding that which was reinforcing and that which the kids wanted, and we would set up certain things that if they would clean their room or get up on time or go to school or participate in things that were positive, they would get certain reinforcements. And it was very, very powerful, just the use of a reinforcement. We do these naturally, but we set these up in homes. And so what you do is you start with the positive reinforcement. And in this case, let me now share a little bit about training. Let's try the dolphins. And I'll show you just real quickly what I mentioned earlier, how we use two things, a bridge signal and a target to train a dolphin to jump out of the water.
So being high would be a positive reinforcer for drug users?
Using drugs that have a high pleasurable outcome, right, which most abused drugs do, can be highly reinforcing. That's right. Pain medication, we'll talk about it, probably functions more in what we call negative reinforcement. It takes away pain, but it's reinforcing, and so medication is taken that way. So yes, indeed. There are a lot of these ways in which behavior is shaped. So how do we take this animal and train it? First of all, what would you do to train a dolphin that is swimming around? How would you get it to jump? I don't know if you've ever seen this, but they take like a target and they put it way up in the sky. I don't know if you've seen this before. And I remember the first time thinking, there is absolutely no way that dolphin can jump out of the water and jump that high. Anybody remember that moment or seeing this, how high they jumped? Well, the way they did it was this, and this is how you can train a lot of different animals, and you start with something that I mentioned before called a bridge signal. A bridge signal is just that. It's the animal is doing something good, and you want to reinforce a behavior, all right? And so the way you reinforce it is you give it a bridge signal that tells the animal that might be far away that, hey, that's a good thing, do that again. Anybody know an example of a bridge signal that they might use to train animals with? You could do lots of things. Think about what they might use. Anybody know in training the example, a bridge signal? You ever heard of, they have even some sounds that a clicker makes, or a particular whistle, or even saying the word good becomes this bridge signal. So you take a dolphin, and it's out there swimming, and what you want to do is, as soon as it does something, like dolphins naturally jump, or this rat is naturally exploring, and as soon as you click it, this rat knows, ooh, I've just done something good. And it knows it because you give it a praise. You say good, or you blow a whistle. And here's what you do. To train this animal, you begin by this kind of whistle, for example. And this is what they'll use in SeaWorld, because this whistle, you can hear it above water and below water. And the dolphin does something. Let's say it's swimming and it naturally jumps. And you want to say, oh, that's good. Come over here and get a reinforcement. I want you to do that again. So the dolphin jumps, and you blow this whistle. And that's the bridge that says, ooh, that's a good thing. This bridge now means you're about to get something good. And the way you do that is you condition it, what we call secondary reinforcement. You associate that bridge signal with some event. So before I talk about targets, the idea is we take this conditioned reinforcer, and it starts like this. You teach the animal by using classical conditioning to associate the sound of a or a whistle or a click or a good with the food. So you go like this, the dolphin comes up, you have a pile of fish there, and you make whatever that bridge signal is, you whistle, and it's a sound, let's say, and that means good, and so you hand it. As soon as you do that whistle, you give it to you feed them the fish. And you keep this association going, and then you whistle, and you give it the fish. And then you whistle, and you give it the fish. Now, the animal knows the whistle means they're going to get fish, and that's a bridge signal. Does that make sense? That's the bridge. Then you just simply grab a target, and targets can be almost anything. It could be your fist. In this case, for dolphins, if you've seen them at SeaWorld, it's this ball right here, and they'll take this ball and they'll use the bridge signal like this. The dolphin comes up, it's hungry, it's ready to get some fish, and you go. You give it fish, and it now knows, okay, every time this person whistles, I'm about to get a fish. They might jump out, be swimming around, and you go, ooh, that was good. And then they come back over and they get the fish. That's the bridge signal. The target is, you teach it to touch the target to get reinforcement. And so you might go like this. You might hold your fist right here and touch the animal's nose. And as soon as it touches it, you go, and you give it food. Then you move your fist over here, and then an animal comes over, and as soon as it touches, you go, and you give it food. Make sense? And so now you take this target, and you can move it over here, and the animal knows all I have to do is go over and touch it, like that. Snout, nose, I don't know, do they have noses? Whatever. And so you go over like this, and you touch the animal right here, and eventually this animal has now realized, ooh, I touch this right here, and I get food. And that's all you need. Now you have a bridge signal, which tells the animal, good job, from a distance. And touch this, and you will get reinforcement. And you can take that ball and dangle it anywhere and show the animal, and they'll come up and touch it. Jump up, touch it, and then they go, and they come over and get the fish. Make sense? And this is now, this animal can jump way up there. And you can see they're holding right here a target, right up here for this animal to come. It's obviously missing the target apparently, but you can see the idea is they come up and just simply touch this. And now training comes in using simple operant conditioning. We use this with animals, but you use this with children as well. There's ways in which, maybe not the ball and the thing like that, but you do use operant conditioning principles, and it works very well. Before I even tell you something about negative reinforcements, let me give you one example about how powerful positive reinforcers are. In these homes that I worked with, these children, what we found was they almost always chose. Do you remember me talking about how they chose to pay attention or chose to buy time with a counselor? Do you remember me mentioning that in here? Almost all of these kids, if given an opportunity to buy something, because they got all of these points throughout the week by making their bed or cleaning up or going to school on time, they would earn these kinds of rewards. And then at the end of the day or sometimes the end of the week, they could buy things like candy or a remote control. That was very reinforcing. They got to hold the remote control for 1 hour to watch whatever TV they wanted to watch. Or they get to buy the stereo remote control. And so they get to control the songs. And so they would buy these things. But almost always, you know what they bought? When they had a good couple of days and they had enough points, they had the ability to buy candy as a reinforcer, or, like I said, the remote control to control the TV or stereo. Many of them actually would purchase things like attention. And they would do this by saying, I just want to be able to hang out with that counselor and they have to pay attention to me. And they found that very reinforcing. Isn't that interesting? And you find this with children all of the time. Look at them, pay attention to them, and you see them living up to that and wanting your attention. And that's why kids oftentimes act out, is to do what? Oftentimes it's to get a parent's attention. And so you can see them doing things just to say, look at me, recognize me. And these kids in many of these homes would use this ability to buy something, and oftentimes they just would say, that's what I want. 30 minutes. This guy, we get to go for a walk and we talk together. And that was very reinforcing. So it doesn't have to always be something material. It could just be us, what we give them. Now a negative reinforcer functions the same way, right? It functions the exact same way. A negative reinforcer increases a behavior simply by taking away something unpleasant. And so there are ways in which you will increase a behavior by removing this, what we call unpleasant stimuli. And I've given some examples here, but if you are ever, for example, in your car and you start it, what's the first sound you hear? You hear the buzzing of the seat belt or the dinging or whatever it is, and that's a how is your putting on a seat belt reinforced in this case? It's reinforced by doing what? You get your car, you put the key in, and you hear the ding, 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 right? And so what do? You put your seat belt on. Well, that stops the dinging. That's removing this unpleasant stimuli, what we call an aversive stimuli. All right, make sense? All right. In taking, for example, this unpleasant stimuli and removing it, what it does is it makes a behavior stronger. If you have a headache and someone gives you a little yellow pill and says, ooh, this is a great thing for headaches, and you take it, you're liable to take that little yellow pill again because it removes something bad, the headache. All right, questions so far? Does negative reinforcement make sense? And do you understand the difference between positive reinforcement? The only difference is they both increase behavior. You put on your seatbelt more often. You take this pill to get rid of this headache. You might do whatever. So you increase this behavior. The only difference is it's by removing something bad. All right? Questions? Go ahead.
Which one's more effective?
Reinforcement is very powerful in general. I don't know if you could really make a strong case that one is stronger than the other. They both work pretty well. But I will tell you this, they're both way more effective than punishment. All right? Punishment is very different. Punishment decreases behavior, and it decreases behavior because it simply is an action that follows a behavior that's aversive or negative and causes a decrease. All right, how many in here were punished as children? Spanked? All right, what were forms of punishment that you had as a kid? Yeah. One more time?
Tablespoon of Tabasco sauce.
Okay. I assume the Tabasco sauce was if you said bad things or did something or spanked. Another one, yeah?
Don't to the Disneyland.
All right, or you were things were taken away. No trips to Disneyland. Yeah, what was yours? How many had? He said sit in a corner. How many had you go sit in a corner or stand somewhere in a corner? And wow, a lot of you. Any other forms of discipline that go out and stay in the garage? All right. I tell you what, do this. Take 1 minute. Tell the person next to you how your parents oftentimes disciplined you or people around you, the most common form or way. And we'll take 2 minutes, share real quickly common discipline techniques in your house.
My little sister was self-disciplining.
Wait, one more time?
My little sister was self-disciplining.
For herself.
Yeah, around herself.
She still do it or no?
Yeah.
It's pretty good. That's interesting. Yeah, it usually happens in ways that are, with some kids that might happen, but that's interesting. Pretty unique. Yeah, just started. Okay. Next. Most of you found out that you were not alone in that discipline is a fairly common thing, especially punishment. How many say you had more positive reinforcement to shape your behavior than you had punishment? That is, your parents kind of used that one more. How many said punishment was more common? How many of you probably deserved a lot of that punishment? Because are there any problems with punishment? Are you different now because you were punished? Are there negative consequences to punishment? What could be some side effects? Anybody have any side effects to know that this is not always a good thing? What's a possibility if we continue to use, and by the way, let's call punishment this. I'm talking now physical or corporal punishment. That is, let's say a spanking that occurred. Timeouts are an example, but side effects specifically from spanking. Anybody heard of any of these before? Are there any?
Has there been proven that if you spank a child, they're more aggressive when they get...
Is a child potentially more aggressive because they've been spanked? Well, interestingly, children are picking up certain messages according to some. By the way, this is very controversial. There's lots of different opinions on this, lots of different research. It's been going on for decades now, trying to explore. And we've gone through this in our culture, in different cultures, cycles where, punishment is really not a good thing. Don't do it because there's a lot of negative side effects to, no, there's not a lot of side effects. It's a good thing, and punishment actually does help children. And I'll just tell you, there's a lot of research out there on this. Some have examined the side effects to strong physical punishment, which is what I'll be talking about just for a brief minute, in that it does show some effects on the person being punished. Overall, kids that are strongly physically punished tend to stop what we call or suppress a lot of behaviors. They just, if you get punished, then they're going to not act well. They're not going to, they're going to not behave as often, or they're going to suppress some of their activity. Okay? And that's a possible side effect. Kids that are punished a lot or spanked a lot oftentimes show this suppression of behavioral activity. They show stronger emotional responses at times. And these triggering of strong emotional responses can occur, including increasing aggressive behavior. They begin to learn this is the way to get things or to solve things, and some of them will do stronger aggression. I'll talk when we get to social psychology about modeling behavior of aggression and how early studies showed that kids who watched an adult, are there such things as Bobo dolls anymore? Have you ever heard of those dolls that they fill them up with air and they have sand at the bottom, and if you punch them, they come back up? Is that what they call them? Anyway, We'll talk a little bit about some of the modeling that goes on. Studies by Albert Bandura that showed that kids that saw adults punching, kicking, hitting would never do some of these things until they saw an adult do it. And when they saw an adult do it, like an adult would be in the other room and would take like a wooden mallet and go pow right in the nose and say certain things, then these little kids were let into the room and they would mimic those behaviors that they never do on their own. And that's this idea of modeling behavior that we'll talk about in social, but increasing aggressive behavior is a likely side effect. Now, it doesn't mean that all punishment is bad, and it doesn't mean that physical punishment results in this. It does mean that excessive punishment can have these side effects. To make punishment more effective, a lot of researchers and psychologists are saying there's a couple of key things you should do. What could you do to make punishment more effective if you are going to spank somebody? What was effective for you? But do you have anything that was like, ooh, that made it so how many had parents that say, I'm about to spank you and here's why? Yeah, which doesn't necessarily make it any funner, but at least they began to explain the punishment. And another key feature, by the way, was that if it's done immediate. And I'm not talking immediate as in you do something and they reach out and smack you immediate. We're talking the idea of this punishment occurs fairly quickly after the behavior that was done, the more immediate. It's not like, well, next week you're going to get in trouble for that, what you did. That would not be immediate.
A really cool thing about punishment in general is like for sports and for coaches, and if you lose a game or if you do something wrong.
Yeah, teams, she mentioned sports, and coaches will use this, right? How many of you all have been on a sports team in which you have to run laps because of something? Or we used to have to, in baseball, our punishment was this. It was such a drag, but if you made an error, no problem. But if you made a mental error, we were running all day. We would just run laps. Mental errors mean you threw the ball to the wrong base, or instead of, but so errors. So coaches can use this, parents can use this. Immediate simply means that it's done almost as soon as the behavior is done. And the closer in timing, the more effective. It's also important that you're consistent. The idea of consistency means that the same behavior is going to be punished. We, in working with, in these different homes, we learned that you took care of it and you did it immediately, but you also did it consistently. Every time somebody kicked somebody else or aggressed against them physically, that was grounds for them to be punished. Right? Does that make sense? Sorry, you kicked her and this is the punishment, and you were consistent in doing this. This can be also important that it's strong. Punishment to be most effective. It has to be in some ways understood to be strong. I'm not talking severe. And in general, we're talking about avoiding physical punishment. So we would do this oftentimes. We'd make sure the kid was paying attention to us, and sometimes it required us to, hold their shoulder and say, look, I'm being serious now. It's not like you're squeezing or hurting them, but you are communicating, this is important, and this is how behaviors like this affect us and why you can't do that. So strong, not severe, and you tended to avoid physical punishment. By the way, I've always wondered this. In my generation, you could go to school, and a lot of people my age could get spanked in school. Has anybody in here been spanked in school before? Is there? Oh, some of you, yeah. How many had spanking? You maybe weren't spanked, but in your schools, they would spank you at, wow. How many you never heard of that before in a school system? Okay. I'm not sure if it's very common anymore. How many, if you're in maybe homeschooling, that might be a different thing.
Mine is private.
Or private Christian. Oh, okay. So you're on card systems, like colors. By the way, lastly, to make it effective, explaining the punishment. Yeah.
I went to Catholic school, and one of the nuns told me that she wished they could still do corporal punishment.
Yeah, there's been a shift in our culture away from a lot of corporal punishment. It's not as common. I'm sure there are some teachers that would like to have it back because it worked real well. So explaining the punishment. Here's a real quick example. When my daughter was really little, we didn't allow hitting. And so here's my story where I was telling her, you have to, you can't hit. You don't have to write this down. But when I mean explain the punishment, this is what a person behaves. You don't have to write this down. Taking the misbehaving child, for example, some parents set out for a ride in the car and you talk to them. The child calms down fairly quickly and really doesn't talk or take too much time. This really doesn't. With the change of scenery, the child is allowed to focus on something different. Once the child has the opportunity to change perspective, things get better quickly and the child has a better understanding of his place within the family and begins to understand the family's concept of acceptable behavior. And this is the family's way that they took the child out for a ride, and the child came. 99, yeah, that was a joke. Here's my daughter, however, now, Natalie, when she was little. And I asked her one time, we had different styles. And she, for example, was very, how should I describe her? She's very social and what really worked for her was taking her out of the family context and putting her, how many of you had to go stand in a corner? Did you say? Some of you, we called that timeout. And so we would count to 3. How many had the counting to 3 thing going on, where if I get to 3, you get a punishment? And so here's Natalie. Ready? Natalie, you do this. I'm going to count to 3, and you're going to have to go to timeout. And she realized right away timeout was bad because it took her away from things and people. And you would put her into the corner and say, I'm sorry, you did it. You got to go in the corner. And I'm serious. She would stand there, and within 5 seconds, I'd be saying, Lisa, get her out. The noise, the sound she's making, it's bad. Get her out. She'd be I don't want to be away from people. I was like, just stay. I'd go, Lisa, how long? She goes, it's been 12 seconds. Well, get her out. So it was extremely effective. For my other children, it was not at all effective. I remember my son one time, we did this. Ready? Drew, you do this, you're going to timeout. And he'd be like, okay, whatever. And then eventually he'd be in timeout. And he'd be just standing there. He wouldn't cry or scream or anything, just stand there. One day, come home, sitting there talking to Elisa, and I say, where's Drew? And she goes, he's in timeout. I put him in there 45 minutes ago. And I go, what do you mean? She goes, yeah, I made him in time. And we snuck back there, and he's doing this. He's going, it was like life for him was happy. Like, at least I don't think this works anymore for him. I don't think timeout is as effective as it is on Natalie. So all kids are different. So the only thing we learned with Drew was we would say, we finally just started taking money away from him. You save up your money. You kick Natalie, I'm taking $5. Kick. All right, give me the money. No. So different children have different things. Here's Natalie when I.
What's timeout for?
For hitting if he's bad.
Timeout helps you do.
We must not to be bad.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and we never told her, well, you're bad, go time. That's just one of these things that these. So the idea is you explain it and say, listen, I'm going to put you in timeout, and here's why. Because you kick somebody, you hit someone, and that's where you go. You have to go to timeout. The counting of 3 has been very effective. Some of you, any other ways in which your parents have utilized these things? My daughter is this. Ready? We would say, you're going to timeout if I get to 3. But I remember pulling up one time in the car, and we were very late. And I said, come on, guys, we got to go. We got to hurry. Come on, let's get out of the car. So we pull up, we jump out, and Drew jumps out, and then Natalie's just sitting in the back like this. And she's just sitting there. I said, come on, Nat, we got to go, man. We got to go. We're late. And she's just sitting there. I say, Nat, sweetie, let's go, man. Come on, we got to go. I said, I'm going to count to 3. You got to get out of the car. I said, we got to go. And she looks at me and goes, why don't you count to 3? Huh, 1, 2, 3. And I smacked her. No, I didn't. That would be wrong, bad, not good, not effective. So I said, 1, 2, and she jumped up. But see, that's feistiness right there. And sin nature, if you want. Each kid is different. Some things are more effective with some kids than with other kids. You just have to learn what it is. There's no one good way. Anybody have anything else that was effective for them that your parents used or maybe not so effective? These are all different ways. Do you have one?
If I had nothing like a spanking or something and they're trying to talk to you while you're spanking them,
Yeah, the idea, this hurts me a whole lot more than it hurts you, yeah. Or talking to you while you're spanking, yeah, it may not be as effective, which is why, we would do this, by the way. There does come a point where you have to associate that, and I'll just say this, physical punishment, for the way we raised our children, it just rarely happened. They had to be, I think we spanked them maybe 2 or 3 times. It was just very rare. Even with our 7-year-old today, not common. How many were only spanked like once or twice and you got the message and you learned right away? How many were spanked a lot because maybe you just were a little bit more stubborn? Okay. Any observations or questions about punishment? There's different theories on this, parenting. Question. Wait, one more time. Strong. Yeah, leashes. Yeah. How many of you seen the leashes with parents that are pulling them away? Yeah. You guys have any thoughts on leashes? Here's, I'll tell you what, let me give you some applications first. If you see some of these children that have the leashes, how many have seen this around in public where a kid and a parent might have them attached to this thing to help them? I think, I don't have any, it's just an opinion. There's nothing here scientific or not research based. I think a parent that does that is concerned for their kid and wants to, is worried about them running off. They're probably worried that they might, do something and they can't grab the kid. And that's not uncommon. A parent fear, I could see why they might do this. It probably is overused and not used maybe just as a way rather than letting the kid walk around and explore. So I'm not sure what I feel about it. It feels a little odd to me, but I think some parents could say, you don't know my child. They'll run and jump and do everything they can, and we have to be real careful. By the way, all this that I've been talking about is known as something called behavior modification when you apply it into settings like homes. Behavior modification is a technique of changing behavior by reinforcing that which is good. And by the way, just the bottom line on punishment, it's almost always more effective to use positive reinforcement than to spank. For children, it's way more effective. Punishment is fine at certain times, but we learn kids respond to things like attention and reinforcement. We used to do this with kids. Well, our kids, they'd be lying, at night I remember the kids they're real wiggly and they don't want to lay down and you want them just to be quiet. And so what you do as a parent, we learned is if we could reinforce something good and positive, we'd wait for that moment and say, so a kid would be wiggling around and instead of spanking them, which we could have said, stop wiggling. Or, kids, if you ever eat at a dinner table and you see 3 and 4-year-olds, they have a hard time sitting still. You could spank them, right? And say, sit. And that would stop them and they'd probably sit for a while. But we have found personally that positive reinforcement was way more powerful. As soon as a kid would do something very good, like just lay still, I'd go like this. I remember we had two of our kids in bunk beds, and they'd be lying there at night, and one of them would finally get quiet, and I'd say, "Oh, good job! You're laying so quietly. Oh, I'm so proud of you. Way to go!" And the other one would be like, "What about me, Daddy?" And I'd go, "Wow, you're starting to lay still. Really good." We did it at the dinner table all the time. I'd catch them taking a bite of food, which was an infrequent event. And they would sit still, and they'd just sit there, and I'd go, "Oh, look," because they'd be walking around, and you'd say, "Sit, come on, sit, stop moving around." One of them would finally sit still, and you'd go, "Oh, good job, you're sitting there." And the other one would go, "What about me, Daddy?" And I'd say, "Yeah." So just the other day, we have this now 7-year-old, and our almost adult children are over there. And I go like this, I look at, she's just wandering around, 7, not able to sit, and I say finally to the other one, I go, I say, Drew, I love the way you're sitting there. And I say, and he goes, thanks, Dad. And I say, and Natalie, she's 16, and I say, way to go, you're sitting there. It's a game, oh, thanks, Dad. And you see Caroline, the 7-year-old. What about me, Dad? Wow, you're sitting good too. So anyway, all that to say, manipulate your children all you can using psychology, because frankly, I don't know what else you got. That's it. That's the only way we learned any of this. Positive reinforcement is way better than punishment. We could spank them, but it didn't seem to work anywhere near as well as this. Applications, I mentioned behavior modification in these programs is indeed, the findings are that children respond to positive reinforcement much more frequently than they do to punishment. We used it less common. Questions on that, on operant conditioning or classical conditioning for that matter, operant or classical conditioning, before I transition. Now remember, this stuff is not on the exam on Monday. Ready? Sensation, perception, states of consciousness. That's what's on the exam. This is for the next section. Wait, one more time, if you're what?
Oh, like you said that it's a regulate what you wait and then positive reinforcement. What if you're like in the middle of doing something, like and you're like you need to tell them at that moment, like that's not.
Yes. No, that's a great question. There are only certain times where finding them doing the good thing may not be the best course of action, because it's just timing, right? They're in the middle of doing something. You have to stop them, get their attention, not have them run out in the street or whatever they're doing, playing with something. And then it requires a different technique. And that sometimes it requires maybe punishment or some warning or whatever. So you're right. There are certain cases in which that finding them doing something good may not work. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. You remember these movies? Memory is really, let's see, this is one of the born supremacies, born identities. What's the theme here? What did he do? In Born Supremacy, Identity, whatever, it's a movie about he doesn't have memories, right, of his past or what he's done recently. He had some sort of event that occurred he forgot recently. We'll talk about different kinds of amnesia and is it really possible? This individual and these, both had short-term memory loss, at least that's what the claim is. And we're going to talk about memory as the persistence of learning over time, which simply means that these things that we learn, we have to kind of carry them with us, and memory functions in some very powerful, unique ways. But as a beginning, we're going to call memory this. It's just simply the persistence of learning over time. When it comes to studying this, we're uncovering some amazing things. You don't have to write that down. It's this idea that we use our brains in a particular way and fashion that allows us to do and to know a lot of things, but we're learning stuff about memory that is very revealing and has a lot of implications. Here's some key questions. What would it be like to have a perfect memory? Anybody know or heard of anybody that has a perfect memory and what their experience is like? There's a number of people that have these, what we call perfect memories. There's a lady here in Southern California, and here's a little bit of her experience.
To try to remember our lives. Scientists say most of us can remember 20, 30, 40 emotional events, powerful days in our lives as it goes by, but you're going to be the one with the one-of-a-kind memory. It allows her to replay her life like a movie, recalling each day in detail, emotional detail. Researchers say it is an autobiographical memory that is simply unmatched. Scientists at the University of California, Irvine have been studying it for 8 years, and she's kept her identity a secret all that time. But now she is ready to talk on GMA and in a new book called The Woman Who Can't Forget. They call her AJ. The subject of most medical studies is usually anonymous. She's a woman with the most amazing memory known to science.
By understanding how her brain does this, we may help write a new chapter of memory research.
It's got to be just like any reference. I mean, you go to the internet to look at an encyclopedia or you ask my sister.
AJ remembers details of what she did every single day since she was 14, instantly recalling dates of news events in her lifetime.
She has the ability in a split second to tell you dates, times, what she was doing, what we were doing, what was happening in history. It's hard to describe.
For her, being able to forget isn't easy. She became a fascination around the world, the human calendar, doctors, journalists wanting to meet her. Her voice heard on the radio just once.
If I'm able to cure a disease, it's a gift. But to remember at the end of every relationship or, anything, it's hard. But it is formed who I am because I remember everything.
Until now, she's been anonymous, dealing with the interest in her brain and her life. Almost too much for bear.
She chose not to reveal herself to the world for several years. You can imagine it yourself. If suddenly the whole world knows about you, there's a lot of people out there.
And we are joined now by AJ, who's really Julie Price, who's saying it on television. A 42-year-old school administrator from Los Angeles, and as I said, it is her first ever live appearance on television, and we had a chance to sit down earlier and do a taped interview. Good morning. Good to see you again. Can I pose some more questions? I love that you don't mind that we keep testing it this way. All right. I know television is one of the things that you remember what you saw on television on the days in your last set. When was J.R. shot on Dallas?
When he was shot, or when did we find out he was shot? Who shot him? He was shot on March 21st, 1980, and we found out November 21st, 1980.
What about the end of All in the Family?
Well, that was in March of 1978.
What about Nancy Kerrigan attacked? Something that interested you?
January 6th, 1980.
Oh, Lord, you're right. The LA riots.
They started on April 29th, 1988.
Unabomber arrested? Ted Kaczynski arrested?
April 3rd or 4th, 1996.
April 4th, 1996. And you will see tonight, I'm reading from the book. I take this book and go through it. And you correct the book. And you are right. At times, I think I have you, and you are right. I know you told me, you warned me, but I didn't believe you. And a lot of people didn't at first, including the scientists, when they first met you. They were astonished straight away. Let's talk a little bit about what it is to be inside your brain, because I am trying to imagine, most of us cannot, what it is to have your history playing in your brain at the same time you're living in the present tense. Describe it.
Well, like right now, in the present moment, talking to you, but I have a split screen in my head where I have a loop of memories just free flowing all the time.
So simultaneously, the calendar of the past is going through, and details like what you had gone.
Well, I remember that. But that's, I mean,
just give me something.
Here's what we're going to do. We'll talk about implications for something like this. We're going to end right here. So remember the exam is Monday. This material is not on the exam for Monday. And so we will start this again on Wednesday after the test. So we'll see you Monday.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.